And it's one thing for me to say it and keep saying it, but when someone with insider firsthand knowledge like Frances Haugen confirms, as she did last week in her Senate testimony, that this is what they do, it validates what I've maintained for all these years. Posting content, violent content, and murder on social media is not free speech, it's savagery. And as you all know, Alison's murder shared on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube is just one of the egregious practices that are undermining the fabric of our society. Ms. Haugen revealed, again, as we've known for some time, that Facebook has the ability to use its AI to stop this shameful practice. But instead, their algorithms are not designed to make using Facebook as helpful or as wholesome as possible. They're designed to keep users hooked. Just like the recommended videos on the sidebar on YouTube, same thing. And just as we experienced with YouTube, Facebook wants the public to self-police. They want you to report. They want me to report. They want me to watch the videos and report them. They want, and even when you do, as Eric Feinberg, who will talk about the reporting methods, even when you do report it, they ignore you. Now here's an example, and it's cited in the FTC complaint. Acting on my behalf, former Ambassador Mark Ginsburg from the Coalition for the Safer Web sent a letter to Sheryl Sandberg, Facebook's Sheryl Sandberg, about the video of Alison circling on Facebook. She responded back saying, oh yeah, we'll take this down. And 6 years later, the videos are still up from 6 years ago. I continue this fight, not just for me and for Alison, but for all of those who have been equally harmed by Facebook. Haugen told the Senate, my fear, quote, my fear is that without action, divisive and extremist behavior as we see today are only the beginning, unquote. And allowing video of an execution, what's tantamount to an execution, is part of this danger. Now, thanks to Section 230, the only recourse I have is to file an FTC complaint. Sadly, we've heard no response from the FTC since we filed against Google in February of 2020. Now, since the head of the FTC last year was a Trump appointee, I didn't expect much, but at least I expected some kind of a response. There was none. Current FTC Chairwoman Lina Khan, who President Biden appointed earlier this year, has made it her express mission to bring more balance to the tech world. Now, Khan said in a statement at the time of her confirmation, quote, I look forward to working with my colleagues to protect the public from corporate abuse, unquote. Well, Ms. Khan, you've got one complaint that's gone without a response for almost 2 years. So you're talking the talk, but you need to walk the walk. Let's see those words turn into action. And what about Congress? In August of 2019, I testified before the Senate Judiciary Committee about the abuses of Google. I listened to Karan Bhatia, Google's lobbyist, perjure himself when asked by Senator Hirono if the videos of Alison's murder had been removed, and he responded in the affirmative. Not true. In the months that preceded and followed that hearing, we've seen a parade of the usual suspects before congressional committees with the same questions and the same evasive responses, particularly Mark Zuckerberg. Now, I don't know if you all caught it this weekend, but Saturday Night Live did a parody about the hearings last week with Cecily Strong playing Senator Feinstein, saying, quote, what Facebook has done is disgraceful, and you better believe that Congress will be taking action right after we pass the infrastructure bill, raise the debt ceiling, prosecute those responsible for the January 6th insurrection, and stop Trump from using executive privilege, even though he's no longer president. But after that, you better watch out, Facebook, end quote. Sadly, that's a parody I've seen play out for real. If there's one thing I do agree with Zuckerberg on, it's that he's done with hearings. I am too. Congress has heard from him, from me, Ms. Hagen. I could go on. The point is, it's time to act. I hope my FTC complaint gets traction, but ultimately, Congress is going to have to fix social media before it ruins our country and the world. And to me, the fix is pretty easy. You do away with the liability immunity Section 230 provides to social media. If Facebook and YouTube find themselves in a court and looking at thousands of legitimate lawsuits, I guarantee you they'll stop the action that makes this filing necessary. Congress, you all are disgusted with social media for different reasons, but it's time to come together, stop dallying, and do something. Enough with the hearings. Do your jobs. Thank you. And what I'd like to do is turn this over to Aderson Francois from Georgetown University Law. Yeah.
Thank you, thank you, Andy, and thank you for all the hard work that you've done over the years. I just want to briefly summarize the nature of the complaint that we've brought against Facebook and Instagram before the FTC. The gravamen of our complaint is that Facebook and Instagram lied to the government when they claim that they abide by the terms of service. They lie to consumers when they claim that they do not host violent and harmful content. And most importantly, they lie to victims and their grieving families when they indicate that should they be told by these families that this content exists, they will promptly remove them. They have done none of these things. To be clear, to this day, since Alison's murder in 2015, to this day, if you go on Facebook and on Instagram, you will find videos depicting Alison's murder that are easily accessible, despite being reported on both platforms several times. Many of these videos are several years old. They are neither educational nor newsworthy, and they are contrary to the often explicit design to glorify violence, shock and disgust viewers, or promote conspiracy theories about Alison's death and about Andy. These videos display the raw and often unedited footage of Alison's live TV murder. In these videos, viewers can see the initial gunshots being fired at her. They can hear her screaming as she is shot and she turns to run away. They can see the camera falling on the ground, as well as Alison's cameraman being murdered. And they can see the gunman walking through the frame. Many of these videos have been accessible on both Facebook and Instagram, going back to 2015. And they are still accessible to this day as we speak. Now, Facebook claims that it does its best to remove its videos when they are flagged. But the truth of the matter is it has never done so. It has refused to do so because it actually is in its interest to get more clicks and to make more profits if these videos remain. Now, the fact of the matter is, as Enzi himself has explained, and as I'm sure all of us in this room understand, a parent losing a child leaves behind an indescribably hollow wound. And the fact that daily that parent must live with the idea that their child's murder is being played over and over and over again on these sites for profit and entertainment, it's like having salt rubbed in that wound on a daily and hourly basis. For years now, Andy has urged, asked, even begged executives at these companies. He has appealed to their conscience. and it has come to naught. So we believe now is the time, and indeed the time has long passed, for the FTC to take action and rein in the use of these videos on Facebook and Instagram.
Thank you, Addison. And now I'd like to introduce Eric Feinberg, who is part of the Coalition for a Safer Web, and he can talk about the reporting techniques. You know, Eric has done what I cannot do, and that is to watch the video of Alison's murder. You know, for obvious reasons, I've never seen it. I never want to see it. And he's done the hard work to see this stuff and flag it. So I'm going to turn it over to Eric.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you so much for the introduction. Thank you, everybody in attendance. And Andy's right. My name is Eric Feinberg. I'm Vice President for Coalition for a Safer Web. And as the name says of our nonprofit organization, we're looking for a safer web. And when you think about it, to see on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube the murder of Alison Parker, which I've reviewed, as Andy said, on his behalf, his and Barbara's behalf, probably 10,000 times, it's despicable that these companies rely on basically their users, or would rely on Andy to report these videos. That would be an analogy like me standing on a TSA line and securing Andy before he goes on a plane. And what I feel is enough already, as Andy said, and I've been with Andy, I've been very advocating for Section 230, because if you took the Section 230 immunity away, they would have, immediately they'd probably take these videos down. Let me go into, as Andy said, the reporting process. Our organization and my software has the ability to find these videos on Facebook when they can. And as Andy said before, the president of the Coalition for a Safer Web, Mark Ginsburg, who has a direct communication with Sheryl Sandberg, sent an email in February of 2020 to Sheryl and said, we, as Coalition Safer Web, using our technology, found this despicable video of Alison on Facebook. This is in February of 2020. Cheryl's response back was, great, Mark, thank you. Please tell us when you find more. Think about it, that we have to tell Facebook that we're outside the infrastructure, that these videos are up, and they didn't take action from February 2020. Now let's fast forward to the last few weeks, working with Addison, working on Andy's report for this FTC complaint. Both myself and Matt, who's on our team, Matt, raise your hand, we went into Facebook, we found, a half dozen videos on Facebook and Instagram, and over the last week, we reported these videos using Facebook's reporting system. We had no reply back that these actions were taken, and as of last night, I reported these on October 5th, 6th. As of last night, October 11th, I checked again, the videos have still not removed. So what good is it when Facebook makes these representations and saying, we rely on our users, we reported it not only through the reporting system, but to Sheryl Sandberg, the chief operating officer at Facebook, and still, as Andy said, 6 years after Alison's murder, you can still find these videos on Facebook and Instagram. As Andy said, I think it's enough. Congress needs to act, and we need to take away the Section 230 immunity. Thank you so much, and if you want additional questions, I'm here to take them.
Thanks, Eric. And now I'm going to open this up for questions. If you would wait for Mike to come around with the mic, and so that your question will be heard. So, any questions from anyone, or have we been so thorough that you don't have any? Hang on one second. And if you would, please identify yourself, too.
I'm David Smith of The Guardian. Just on a point of fact, could you just talk a bit about what specifically are you asking the FTC to do, and what sort of potentially can it do? Can it literally sort of pick up a phone to Sheryl Sandberg and say, take this down now, or is it more complicated than that?
Well, unfortunately, thanks for the question. There's only a limited amount that the FTC can do other than fine Google and Facebook for their violations of their terms of service. I mean, there's a limit to what they can do, but what it can do is send a message that we hope Congress will receive and go, okay, you know, these guys are acting, it's time now for us to act. So it's really kind of an incremental step. You know, they could fine them each $1 billion, and that's chump change to these people. You know, and it's not going to change their behavior, but at least it will hopefully send a message. And that's really what we're trying to do, is send a message that, number one, the FTC will function and do its job, and that ultimately Congress will do its job.
Hi, I'm Carl with Communications Daily. I'm just curious, what is the process with the first complaint? Can it just linger indefinitely? Have you heard anything from the agency in that regard?
Addison, I'll attempt to answer that one. It can linger, which it has. I mean, there's been nothing done. I know that the Georgetown team has continued to update it with, here's more information, here's more, and so far, you know, it's been crickets. Is that about right, Addison? Is that?
One moment, Andy.
Sure.
Yes, the FTC, and this relates to the prior question, the FTC is enabling legislation, empowers it to initiate an investigation of both YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook if, in fact, the FTC determines that these companies are misleading consumers, which we allege that they are. Once the investigation is initiated, and concluded, the FTC has the ability to write and publish a report, and as Andy indicated, to A, fine the companies, and B, demand that the companies make certain changes either in their practices or in the terms of service. So we do not mean to suggest that the FTC is entirely powerless. They are not. They have some power to act if they so choose. Of course, the FTC's internal processes and deliberations are fairly opaque, and they don't usually inform the complainant, in this case us, of when and how and whether they've actually set in motion the investigation. Presumably, they would have informed Facebook once we filed the complaint, and arguably Google. But as Andy indicated, we filed the initial complaint against YouTube, and over the last few months, we've followed up by amending the complaint on at least 2 occasions by providing additional materials that show the manner in which these companies were violating their terms of service.
And FYI, the complaint is going to be filed officially this afternoon. We have copies of it up here for those of you who would like it, like to see it, and then of course it'll be online as well. Anybody else? Okay. Well, thanks again for coming. Thanks for your support and getting this message out there and broadcasting the message, because it is important. As I mentioned, you know, mine's one small piece, my issue's one small piece of a larger issue, and that these guys are facilitating the decimation of our democracy and instability around the world. And, you know, something like this hopefully will start the ball rolling and we can get some action. So thanks again. And thank you guys.